Now, classroom education isn't necessarily the problem. The knowledge offered by professors and programs at universities these days is probably unparalleled. From my time at Case Western Reserve University, I know for a fact that the rigor of university can set you up with some basic degree of success in life. But traditional degree programs have this tendency of putting you on this conveyor belt, filled with known challenges ahead of you. Tests, projects, dissertations. While I'll admit these challenges may not necessarily be easy, they are predictable, comfortable to some degree. Now, I don't know you. I don't know your path in life or your career ambitions, but I know that regardless of who you are, the top 1% in your field do not get to the top 1% by only taking on stepwise known challenges that are all par for the course. The path to the top is instead blazed by those individuals who are able to thrive in the discomfort associated with unknown outcomes. Situations where there are no easy answers and failure is often inevitable. Accelerating success actually goes hand in hand with seeking and embracing discomfort. Today, I hope to show through my story that turbocharging your success could be as simple as getting a bit uncomfortable. When I was a senior in high school, I started a medical technology company with two of my closest friends. Our first big, grand, bold business plan, we got to have a cool name. You know, in those days, we probably had an unhealthy obsession with that movie, The Social Network, and we had an unrealistic idea of what it actually meant to be in a startup, right? And looking back now, I would call my younger self insane for choosing to start a company with no product and no business model outlined. In case any of you in the audience were thinking about doing it, just don't. But we're lucky because we were able to go from this vague concept to a tangible company. You know, we were actually able to grow and build our team pretty much to the point where after my second year of engineering at Case Western Reserve University, we got our first investment opportunity. And I made the decision to leave school to work full-time on my business. And since then, we've grown from this pie-in-the-sky idea to a 25-employee business. And I'm lucky because I get to work every single day with a team of people who are helping to build the next generation of biomagnetic imaging devices and software solutions that are going to revolutionize healthcare as we know it. When I tell people my story, I often get asked the question, how old are you? Which I will say for a second that it would be incredibly rude if I went around asking everybody how old they are. I'd probably be met back with some rude comments. But when I do get asked that question, I will let them know, and they tell me things along the lines of, wow, it's incredible how much you've achieved at 22 years old. Or, you got to be some kind of genius. Or, my personal favorite, when I was your age, all I cared about was beer and women. It's one of these it's one of these situations where it's difficult for me to respond back, not only because I feel like I don't deserve what they're telling me, but also because I don't feel that different from them to begin with. When I started my journey, I was no better prepared to start a company than any of you looking at me right now. I promise. Now, you got to know, I'm the kind of guy who will get nervous riding shotgun with you. If I don't like your driving, I will literally pump a pretend brake on the passenger side. I, like a lot of people, naturally avoid discomfort and crave control. But when I look back at my journey, what I realize is the only reason I've been able to achieve what I have is because I've been forced into some uncomfortable situations. And these situations put me way outside any kind of safe space. But in the process, they bred growth. So I argue, to better achieve your own dreams and success, you have to be willing to seek out those situations that will put butterflies in your stomach. Because seeking discomfort often and with intention will allow you to soar where your peers will fail, and will allow you to clear hurdles with confidence that they will struggle with. And to give you context to my story, you know, we weren't always, like I've mentioned before, we weren't always as confident as we are today in what we're doing. When we started, we were a software-only company building tools for electrophysiologists. In those days, we took passing compliments way too seriously, latched onto them. We believed the premise and idea behind our technology should be reason enough for people to invest actual dollars into the company. And so we got countless proverbial doors slammed in our faces, rightly so, by investors saying that we were too early or we weren't a great fit. So when the first actual investment opportunity came and landed on the table, the investor that actually put the term sheet out, needless to say, we were smitten, right? He schmoozed us with these fancy dinners and these talks of how he could take us places. And even though all we actually had were the capabilities and functionalities of a half-baked product, and the only data we had to rest on were these stories and anecdotes about how doctors would love the technology, we sold him the world and he bought it. And just like that, we were really close to our first round of investment. The last step for us to get the money was for us to show the technology worked in front of him and a room full of experts, including a prominent Cleveland Clinic physician. Never before had we put our necks out on the line like this. Never before had it been this do or die. So to say we were uncomfortable would have been an understatement. But we showed off our technology to this whole room of experts, right? This half-baked viewer application that could see the electrical currents of the heart. But the issue was it was untested, unpolished, unverified. And as a result, they quickly poked holes in everything that we were doing. And try as we did to BS why the patterns and images on the screen were the way they were, they tore us apart. The physician said plainly that it was not valuable. The investor actually accused us of lying, cheating, and manipulating him. And just like that, the investment opportunity was over, off the table. And even though walking out of the room that day, every single one of us felt like garbage, I'm so incredibly glad looking back now that we committed to this moment of vulnerability and discomfort. Because even though on many counts he was wrong, right? We hadn't actually lied or cheated or manipulated anything. Some doctors had genuinely indicated interest in the technology itself. What they did correctly call out was our tendency at the time to stretch the truth. People put words second to data. And so in this moment of clarity, we realized that we couldn't keep peddling an untested product. And we couldn't get people convinced that we were the team that was going to get this company built if there was nothing to show for all the talk we had put out there, right? And so through this meeting, we learned two things very quickly that apply to a lot of us. Number one, to get people to invest time, money, whatever it may be into you, you have to show them that there is something tangible worth investing in. And two, your words only go so far. Remember that we learned these things in one short afternoon, and we learned them more fully than most could have because of how the situation got so uncomfortable. It taught us what we knew and what we didn't know, what we needed to do to never feel that blindsided ever again. Also remember that discomfort means putting yourself at risk of failure. By all counts, we failed. But I know that if we hadn't put ourselves at risk of that failure by exposing ourselves to the discomfort of the situation, we would not be where we are today. Being uncomfortable also means being vulnerable, owning up to what you know, how you feel, and what you need to learn. These are things that, try as they might, the challenges ahead of you on the conveyor belt will only partially do. So from that uncomfortable meeting, we had a mourning period. But then we rallied. We were able to finish our prototype. We were able to actually find a much better market niche for our technology. We were able to run a successful retrospective clinical study on a shoestring budget and convince a big hospital to sign on to a much bigger clinical study with us. And all of this was enough to convince a man by the name of Mark Cuban that we were the real deal. He helped us raise our first actual round of investment. And with it came cash and a resolve to grow, something we never had before. But it also came with these expectations that we were actually going to build and commercialize our device. We were going to grow our team, manage that team actively. It turns out these things are also kind of hard to do if you're also a full-time student. And so the path ahead of me was yet another uncomfortable proposition that was probably best summed up by that song by The Clash. Darling, you gotta let me know. Should I stay or should I go? And it was one of these situations where I was uncomfortable because for so long I had been told by my friends, my family, by society, that university education is your safest path to success, right? The actual ability to stay in school is necessary if you're going to be successful. In other words, it's something we've all heard before, right? But the conveyor belt is your only option. But what also troubled me was the concept of the unknown. What would happen if I were to leave school and the business were to fail? Would it be throwing away everything I had ever worked for? But still, though, the idea that kept coming back to me was this concept that with or without me, the company was getting investment. The company could sink or swim, but I knew I could be part of making it prosper. And in the process, I stood to learn so much that my peers could not in a university setting. How real-world product development works, how to navigate business relationships, how to commercialize a product, how to build a business. From this perspective, if I were to stay in school, I could be stunted. And it's at that moment that I also realized that the conveyor belt actually blinds you to the fact that you're stuck there at a predetermined pace. Your success can sometimes be limited by the pace of those around you and the speed of the conveyor belt itself. So I made the decision to leave school. And it would be a lie if I told you that my time since has been easy, right? It's difficult leaving friends, a support structure, knowledge of what comes next. But by embracing the discomfort found in opportunities outside of the conveyor belt, I was probably able to learn more in the first 6 months of being a full-time entrepreneur than I had in the past 10 years of school before it, about how to succeed as an engineer, as an entrepreneur, as Vineet. And so from our days of actually, leaving the company, we've grown from 5 people in a library meeting room to a 25-person business. I'm lucky to say we've raised over about $10 million in funding to date, that we're in early commercialization right now, that we are currently at the point where we are about to deploy this beautiful medical device to a lot of different hospital sites. But building a business, while a treasure trove of valuable experience, is also difficult, right? And realistically speaking, working and managing people is the hardest part. Especially in a small company, mixing personal and professional relationships create a whole bunch of volatile, uncomfortable situations that will challenge you, right? I remember after we actually raised our first round of funding, our first hire was this young, bright engineer. And he had this scrappiness and energy about him that still inspire me to this day. He had this ability to build and create and engineer from nothing but an idea. And in those early days, we were all friends, right? It was different when it was just 5 people. We hung out together. Obviously, we spent all day at work together. We took trips. It was a different environment. But as the company began to grow and its ambitions shifted to more commercial ones, he began to get more bitter, less in tune with the needs of the company, angry at people like me who, in his eyes, were making bad decisions and screwing him over. The need to build a perfect product began to take precedence over the realities of running a business. And for a long time, I'll admit, I ignored the issue. I'd listen to him vent and ramble, but I was hesitant to do anything more and get involved. I actively avoided having an uncomfortable, open-ended conversation with him. And for a while, it was okay. I was just hoping it would blow over. But things sort of came to a head when we learned that old employees and new hires alike were getting earfuls. Mistrust began to spread fast for no reason other than disgruntlement. And when things sort of reached this apex, try as we did to appease him and quell the situation, it was clear that the anger was deep-rooted. And for the sake of our company, our best option was to let him go. And I'll tell you right now, for anybody who has not done it, firing someone, terminating someone is a dehumanizing experience on both sides. It hurts to tell someone they're not allowed to come back to work anymore. It feels almost cruel to watch them fill a box with their belongings and escort them out of the door. And it's all the worse when that person used to be a close friend. Having to fire him was one of the hardest things we've had to do. It probably put me at a new level of discomfort. But it also taught me some things. It taught me that waiting around only makes impending fallout worse. Months and months of work and maybe years of friendship, were they lost all because I didn't engage in an open-ended, uncomfortable conversation with this person sooner? The culmination of this termination made me realize that it's incredibly important to nip these small conflicts in the bud before they spiral into something that's just a lot harder to come back from. And I replay these moments in my head a lot, right? It's easy to do that, and a lot of us have these moments that we go back to. And when I do, it's easy to think, if I had had this uncomfortable conversation earlier, would things have gone differently? Maybe. But the more I think about it, that's not the point. The point is, I would prefer to have the option of having that moment of discomfort with this individual as opposed to waiting, letting things fester to the point where my options were limited and the relationship was irrevocably strained. And this is an important nuance, coming to acceptance in your own head that not every issue needs resolution right then and there, and not every outcome needs to be known, is necessary for truly embracing this mentality of embracing discomfort. If I have learned one thing in my admittedly limited experience, it is that life offers us choices all the time, comfortable ones and uncomfortable ones. And believe me, you can live a conventionally happy, successful life by sticking only to the safe, known, and amicable found on the conveyor belt. But through the lens of hundreds of people I have met, those that are able to climb higher and succeed faster are those individuals who are able to thrive in discomfort and treat the unknown not as scary, but as experiential learning opportunities. This day and age is a time like no other. It has allowed people like me to start companies that were previously restricted to those with a lot more experience and a lot more gray hair. Trust me, I'm finding new gray hairs on my head every single day. But that's not the point. The point is everything you need from a knowledge standpoint to start a business like mine can be found on the internet, clicks of a button, right? But do not confuse this accessibility of knowledge with success. Because yes, I'll admit, it's true you can use today's technology to create, build, and innovate tomorrow's solutions. Your ability to make an impact with that knowledge will depend on your ability to deal with situations that no amount of reading or studying can prepare you for. The conveyor belt is not the place for you if you choose to reach higher than the status quo. If you choose to seize your own success and turbocharge it, you have to be willing to step off the conveyor belt every once in a while. Seek out new opportunities that will put you in uncomfortable places. Remember that discomfort is the greatest teacher because it exposes us to what we do not know. And even though from that discomfort can come failure, with failure comes real-world, practical knowledge that you are not going to find anywhere else. So for your sake, I urge you, embrace the discomfort. It will be worth it. Thank you.